Hello, friends and neighbors. It is Professor Hamamoto, and the date is March 30th, year 2025. The time, 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And this is the last cast of the month of March. We're almost done with the first quarter of the new year. The months are slipping by very quickly. Today, I have a very exciting show prepared for you. It's titled The Tribute to Victor Thorne, and I'll be leading off with him and his sort of an overview of his basic works. I think he wrote over 40 books. I've read a lot of them, not any close to 40, but I have quite a number of them in my library. And the other part of it is sort of a tribute to what I refer to as conspiratorialist historiography, right? We talked about last session the way in which certain people in the journalistic or academic world have an aversion to the very notion of conspiracy. I spoke of one last week. What's her name? Catherine Holgrim, or I can't remember her name. She's really obscure, who mysteriously rose to the top of her particular world on the basis of her quote unquote scholarship about conspiracy, even though she herself started out that way. She did a 180. And that's not so unusual, right? So today I'm going to be continuing along those lines in praise of conspiratorialist historiography, right? Not conspiracy theory, conspiratorialist historiography. Historiography, again, is the way that professional historians, scholars, academic types, researchers, how we do knowledge, how we create a discussion around certain topics, let's say political assassination or kidnapping or terrorism, right? There is a way, there's a theory and method, there are multiple theories and methods of approaching historical information. How do you write it? And of course, how you write it goes hand in hand to how it is history being understood, right? So we break it down to very elementary principles, those of us who are in this field. And this is one of my continuing gripes, as most of you heard my rants before about amateurs, as talented as some of them are. But amateurs who are coming and they're flooding the zone, as the phrase goes, now here on TubeView and all the other quote unquote platforms, the socials, they don't have an understanding of historiography. I don't think they've even heard the term, and they don't care. It's not even part of their awareness, right? It has a lot to do with the level of moronic discourse, if you want to call it that, that we have descended into here. And I'm not single-handedly on some kind of effort to correct that. I'm just trying to say that this world that those of you who are here in the chat room and watching this later, this world that you and I'm included in this, are involved with is fraught with a lot of not just intellectual, theoretical dangers, but physical danger. Because after all, if you're dealing with conspiratorialist historiography, you're talking about power. You're talking about corruption. You're talking about the most base forms, B-A-S-E, base forms of human behavior, including any number of sexual aberrations. At least until recently, they were considered aberrations. This cabal that has taken over our education system, or is trying to, the process is not complete yet, are trying to normalize the aberrant, right? And a lot of us can't see it. More and more can, though, are able to. And it's because we're starting at a very basic level of historiographic understanding. So there's the intellectual danger, but there's physical dangers. Today I'm going to be talking, for example, about Victor Thorne. That's his pen name. His birth name is Scott Mokulfka. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correct. I think I got it right, because I'll show in a moment an interview with his brother, his younger brother, by I think 3 years or so. But he died at a relatively young age of age 54. And this is less than 10 years ago. This is on August 1st, 2016. And he died supposedly of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Some of the more skeptical amongst us now refer to these types of discoveries as suicided. Suicide became a verb, right? And we've seen this pattern now. We understand it. And this is why the opposition, your professors at UC Davis of history, or they're coming out of the woodwork. I'll share with you some of the books and some of the articles as we go along here. But they feel that they're under siege. Otherwise, they wouldn't spend so much time and effort to neutralize this. And when I mean neutralize, not just intellectually, but physically neutralize this, I think by now, unstoppable force. And it has more to do with the mass public awakening than anything else. And of course, that awakening doesn't just come through divine insight. Maybe it does in a few cases, but most of it comes from people who have given up their lives, in some cases, for the advancement of knowledge and information and analysis. Or in my case, I call it cultural forensics. Right? One such person is Victor Thorne. I'll keep using his pen name so I won't confuse people here. And even if you are familiar with his work, you'll want to watch the entirety of this cast here, because I'm going to go into another part two, and talk about someone more current, I guess. You might know, or even have patronized his company. He's no longer the head of it, the CEO. It's called Overstock.com. Now, I haven't bought anything from them. I don't know how the business model works, but for me, I think from what I understand, it's kind of like Amazon, but everything's at a deep discount, right? Hence Overstock.com. But the big innovation with Overstock.com was the first major corporation. It was valued over $1 million. That might have been some smaller businesses, but first major corporation that accepted Bitcoin in payment for their goods and services, if they offer any. And the person that I'm alluding to is Patrick Byrne. This is his fairly recent book. It was published, I think, in last year. Danger Close is the title. You want to pick up a copy. I should put it in the Amazon affiliate. If you buy it through me or through my link, I think I get a penny or something for the reference. So you just go ahead and pick it up, whatever. But do read it. It's a very good book. And we'll get to that second part of it today, to show you the continuity between some of the pioneers who sacrificed their lives, like Victor Thorne. And I have given a previous talk, for example, on Jim Keith. He also died under mysterious circumstances shortly after returning from one of these Burning Man events, right? So you can check him out. And also his books are still in print. I think most of Victor Thorne's books are still in print. I just recently had to reorder because I've I've read this so many times, I boxed it up, put it away. This is probably the third time I've ordered this trilogy, which I'll show you right now, I guess. And they're all on the Clinton family, all three of them. Can you see it? The reflection, Hillary and Bill. This is volume one. It's subtitled The Sex Volume. And this particular work, I don't know how many pages, over 300 pages, is just devoted to their peccadillos in the area of sex, right? We think you know the history of the famous Clinton affairs, especially that of Billy Boy. Well, read the book. You'll find out. And more than just the salacious aspect of it, Thorn draws the political implications of these escapades that Bill Clinton is involved in. Volume 2 by Victor Thorne is the drugs volume, volume 2. Yes, they go into Mena, Arkansas. Some of you have read about it, but you'll get into some really deep information here. You know about Barry Seal and the landing field that was in Mena, and you know at the time that Bill Clinton was the governor of Arkansas, right? So this helps to build the understanding of the narco state that more and more Americans have finally understood in 2025. I think the fact that there was a cleansing process, if you want to call it that, in electoral politics recently is due a lot to this type of work, which has filtered into the public consciousness. And I've been doing this for 4 years. Hopefully, I've contributed by pointing out certain authors or certain mysterious deaths, for example, that of Anthony Bourdain, and how it fits into this larger system of control that some people call the New World Order. All right, and that harkens back to this whole idea of conspiracy. Because your average candy-ass journalist or academic, amateur or professional, rule that out entirely. They think, I don't really understand their premise that the world just sort of functions as some sort of cosmic watch, a timepiece where evildoers have very little to do with the trajectory of history and culture and society. I don't understand that candy-ass mentality. That's how we're trained. Those of us who are in the profession, but also those of us who go through public education or even private education. Unless you were homeschooled or tutored or were fortunate enough to go to parochial school, because I had friends who went to Catholic school, and they knew a lot of this. It was being taught in the county, but it wasn't taught in the public schools, the curriculum, the official curriculum. Right. So that, by the way, as I've mentioned before, helped clue me into the fact that there's not a universal curriculum out there. And there are multiple interests at play in understanding the world around us. Right. It's not given. It's not a given. We have to discover it. Okay, first of all, let me finish this. This is volume 3 of the Hillary and Bill story by Victor Thorne, and it's called The Murder Volume. Okay, you've heard of Vince Foster. Don't tune out. It goes way beyond that, and we're now in 2025. And again, we're seeing a new cycle of murders and assassinations either being executed or attempted. Now, just last night, I found a news flash that one of the limousines of Vladimir Putin blew up. I think it was in Moscow. And Vladimir Zelensky he had an automobile accident. Really, I don't know. Maybe they're sabotaging each other's GPS. I don't know. Ukraine versus, this is full spectrum warfare here, right? They give him the Michael Hastings treatment, something, who knows, right? So we're at a pivotal moment here the bullets are flying, not literally. There's all kinds of means, drones. For example, this individual here, Cyrus Parsa, was warning Bill Clinton about drones that were going to be employed to take him out of the picture. And speaking of political deaths, we're going to talk about Victor Thorne today, but one of my viewers here, and by the way, why don't you subscribe, right? Become a subscriber so you'll get notifications. And I see by the chat room, most of you are getting the notifications, some of you aren't. And some of you are being unsubscribed. So please resubscribe or subscribe, because I don't want to cede this ground to all the pop-up pundits who are just repeating a bunch of nonsense that they read from the former, quote unquote, former British intelligence asset, MI6, John Coleman. And he did good work, right? But as you know, rat poison is 90% sweet and 10% poison. So, and we have that's the majority of people nowadays who are doing this type of work, who have commandeered TubeView and X and other platforms. So this is why I'm aggressively saying, please subscribe, put me over the 100 mark so that I can get my little YouTube plaque, right? If I make it. If I do, it's going to be because of your support. Anyway, Cyrus Parsa, one of you out there who are a subscriber, sent a message, or maybe it was a Patreon. That's another. Let me take up just my. If you want to support this channel, subscribe to my Patreon. That's how I'm allowed to buy these books, and which I return to you with value added. That's my goal. But one of the patrons or supporters notified me, and I checked it out. And so far as I can tell, this is accurate information, that he himself was found dead. I think, earlier this month. No, that was last month. I'm sorry, February. I don't know the exact date, but I do have. I looked at a couple of sites and a couple of names who I recognize, whose work I trust, saying that Cyrus Parsa indeed turned up dead. Another headshot wound, sort of like Suchir Balaji, who had testified to Congress about OpenAI, and Sam Altman. He turned up dead very recently, again, of a gunshot wound. And the coroner in San Francisco said, after a 40-minute examination, said, oh, it was self-inflicted. So we have a pattern here, right? And of course, Professor Holmgren, forget. I think I'm suppressing her name because she was instrumental in trying to screw me over. They didn't succeed. I'm still here. She was one of the people that were enlisted to put me out of business over at the University of California, Davis. They wouldn't admit ever that these types of conspiracies exist. They just think there's a lot of people who are really unhappy and they just can't bear their paranoid thoughts anymore, and they shoot themselves in the head, right? So Cyrus Parsa. So when I'm talking about the risks involved, they're very real. All right. Another reason that before I head on that you want to subscribe is because I'll be giving, just as a preview very quickly, I'll be talking about Michael Crichton, the author. He was trained as a medical doctor, by the way. He got his degree in medicine from Harvard. And he was a published writer before he finished his residency. And he left the world of medicine behind, at least the practice of it, and went into that great career that most of us have come across, either in film or in the books themselves. Jurassic Park, Rising Sun, Next. And I argue that he was read into a lot of these programs. They found him at Harvard, probably even before that, and said, okay, you're going to be our Ian Fleming, right? You're going to be our John le Carré. You're going to be our guy who's going to interface with the public and the world of intelligence and popularize some of these ideas. And unfortunately for Dr. Crichton, he started writing the truth. He started realizing he's brilliant. He could figure it out, just like Patrick Byrne. And the good news is people like Byrne and Crichton, they're with us, right? They keep resurfacing, and they can't all be killed. You're one of them. You were watching this, are one of these people. I take that back. Maybe they want us all killed except for the robots or the dinosaurs. So Crichton himself died suddenly of some strange. Someone needs to research that. It won't be me. I don't have the time or the inclination, but maybe someone else can look into the causes of death there and do a truly critical biography of Michael Crichton. I think he deserves it. And another person, we're talking about film now, that I'm revisiting is Ridley Scott. This is a biography. I think it's the first major one. I haven't cracked it open yet, but I want to find out about alien. He too also, and this is a hypothesis, he had to have been, like Crichton, read into some very advanced DARPA type programs, and he put it into the popular culture via his movies, right? The whole creatures called the xenomorphs, which are fascinating to me. So I've been collecting academic articles about xenomorphs, right? Because I don't rest with YouTube and just the pop punditry that's out there. And I'm entertained by it. Yeah, okay, just like you are. But I'm trying to move us closer into a level of intelligent analytics here, right? Because it's about our survival as a species. It's that serious, and I don't need to belabor that point. Most of you see this. All right, so when I say that there's some serious stakes involved in this type of inquiry, I'm not exaggerating. And I'll also, before the end of this talk, explain, and I learned something here, how Patrick Byrne has managed to escape being whacked, right? Because that's what always comes to mind is, hey, if you're this truth teller and you're exposing all this, how come you're still alive? I laugh because people ask me that. I'm not important. Personally, I'm not important enough. I have 54,000 subscribers, and I'm at this for 4 years. In YouTube language, in YouTube land, that means nobody's watching except for you guys. Thank you again. But that's okay. I'd rather have a smaller quality audience than a large audience of people who think they know everything there is to know about xenomorphs and want to nitpick me down in the content. Oh yeah, the professor made a mistake about the face huggers or the chest bursters, right? These are usually game heads whose reality is whatever the game of the moment. Not to say that's bad. I mean, I'm fascinated by that. That's just not where I leave off my understanding of the world. So let's continue with Victor Thorne. His full name, Scott Robert Mikulka, died on August 1st, 2016. And that was on his 54th birthday. Okay, these days, that's young, and it was supposedly self-inflicted, but there's some questions. At least I have the questions. His own brother denies that there was any sort of foul play involved. He just as shocked and as upset and as mournful as he is, his brother says that this was just a choice that his brother, Scott Mokulka, exercised. It's because he didn't want to grow old and infirm, so he took his own life. You can accept that if you want to. Does if that makes you feel more comfortable, that's fine. But given the types of books he was writing, we're talking about Victor Thorne now. Given the types of books he was writing and the audiences that he was gathering, he's a very popular author. That's why I'm trying to memorialize him here so the newbies will start doing their due diligence. They'll start doing their reading instead of just sort of regurgitating information that they read off somebody else's website. Okay, that gets us nowhere. In fact, that really serves the opposition very well. They said, "Oh, they're just on a spin cycle, so just let them go." Right? Let that site, that website go. Let that particular celebrity who showed up on X, that pop up, and let him run his mouth because they're just going around in circles. Right. One of the books was published in 2006, 9/11 Evil. And the subtitle is Israel's Central Role in September 11. Right? Okay, that's going to upset some people who are in the intelligence world who do have a track record of rising up and striking first. Right? And that wasn't the only organization or group that he offended. So I'm reading from his blurb here. It says, from that point forward, we encounter a long line of operatives who've done a lot of work for the organization. So he upset the people who were behind, Laos and Cambodia, the Nixonites, the Bush people, the Clinton loyalists, who we'll talk about in a month. Tons of people. I mean, you name a group that to be offended, and Alex Thorne managed to upset practically all of them. It was kind of like JFK. There were any number of groups and interests that would have liked to have seen him dead, right? Multiple enemies that, from what we're learning now, I'm not saying they cooperated in the final deal, but a lot of them turned the other way, looked the other way around when these plots were unfolding. So this is one such book, 2009. Preceding that was a book called 9/11 on Trial. And the subtitle is The World Trade Center Collapse. This was done way back in 2005. Now, you've heard about scientists and engineers, architects and engineers for 9/11. They did some good work, but they're only interested in the technical questions, right? That's called containment. They're not going to talk about the politics. They're not going to speculate about who's behind it. All they know that a building drop, and they're looking at it from a architectural or scientific or engineering standpoint, and that's all they're going to do. And you and I know that that's not enough. You can talk about the trajectory of the magic bullet from the Texas Book Depository to the motorcade below. You can talk about that until you're blue in the face, but really it's the politics that reveal the hidden forces that shape history. 2010, he came out with a book on Barack Hussein Obama. It's titled Frontman, Obama's Darkest Secret Revealed. It's still in print. I checked. Check it out on your local retailer. And keep that one in mind, because when we get to Victor Thorne, the Obama name will resurface, because they were part of a plan to hold on to the US presidency for 20 plus years. It was going to go through Hillary after Barack Obama, and it was going to go through Michelle Obama, and on and on. 20 years is an entire generation. Imagine what they could have done given all that time and all those resources. And by that point, everybody would have been so demoralized, there would be very little opposition left, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there would be increased opposition. I don't know. There's no telling. And we know that people like Victor Thorne, Jim Keith, Jim Mars, even Michael Crichton, I mean, these are names that I've already spoken of, have in their own ways pushed us forward into understanding these dark forces. These are corporate bodies that are linked to banking. They're one and the same, really, when it gets down to it. And they're connected by bloodlines, right? Consanguinity, relation through the blood. That's what they're all about. And I've talked about or alluded to the work of Fritz Springmeier and Cisco Wheeler many, many times. That's a book that should be in your library, talking about bloodlines of the Illuminati, that should be on your bookshelf for frequent reference, just to refresh your memories on how the bloodlines run this system of control, political, economic, and cultural control. Frontman, I'm almost done. I won't go through all the books, but I'll just give you some of the highlights. I have all these books. I've read them, and I forgot a lot about them too. I have to dig them out and refresh my memory. And when I do, by the way, including rereading the Hillary trilogy, which I first read back when it was maybe 2 years after it was released. I was already reading it. Okay. But I realized I forgot a lot. So that's why you need to buy these books. New World Order Assassins. That was published in 2011. Now everybody's talking about the New World Order. It's old hat. It's becoming a cliche. So how do we keep it fresh? How do we keep it real? How do how do we prevent ourselves from just being bogged down in glorified gossip? Oh yeah, Michelle Obama is actually a man. Yeah, so is Mademoiselle Macron. Right, that's interesting, fascinating. I look at it, I read it, but I'm interested in what's making the French Republic tick in the 21st century. What forces? And it's not Emmanuel or Manny Macron or his wife. It might not even be the Rothschild family that runs him. That's where he comes out of. It could be some other forces, which we can take up at some other point. And then there's the book Conspiratoriality. That's the graphic I used for this talk. That was published as recently as 2013. That's a collection of articles he's done, 2013. And by the way, I should tell you that all these books are, unlike the other ones that I hate, are well documented. They'll give you these sources, right? The receipts. They don't always have indices. Or this one does. This through volume set has an index, which I always complain about for the amateur books that don't bother to put indexes in there. So Thorne is a meticulous writer, researcher, but he's also a creative force so far as putting it all together, synthesizing what the New World Order, or the conspiratoriality as he calls it, what it entails. And he bequeathed that information to us. He is a martyr to the truth, Victor Thorne. And then the other book, and I'll stop here, 2015. It's a collection of essays. He's got the lead pieces in it. And the title is America's Racial Powder Keg, which is 2015. And he's got a picture of Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson Sr., Barack Obama, Eric Holder, and some other person who I do not recognize. That's part of the graphics here. And he's proven to be prescient about this one as well, because there is racial, ethnic, class animosity that's being fomented here in the United States in the spring of 2025. And it's even bringing in yellow people, such as Paul Hyun Kim, who was recently picked up for being allegedly behind the terroristic attack on a Tesla dealership in Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, if you, the viewer, have any information that I should look at, any links, that's the type of comment I welcome below here, because there's nothing much online. I don't even know who he is. Who are his parents? Where did he go to school? Did he go to school? I have my suspicions. I think he probably went to Portland State University or UW, University of Washington. I know he's from the Pacific Northwest, and I know all the hubs of the neo-Maoist activist organizations that have infiltrated the academic world. They're at UC Davis as well. They're at every single institution of higher learning in America, probably in Britain too, but I'm only familiar with the US institutions intimately. I call it, right, get your pencil out. This is a Professor Hamamoto neologism. I call it Techno-maoism, right? It's AI with Chinese characteristics. And that's a play on, if you're acquainted with the history, it's said that, oh, we need to practice capitalism with Chinese characteristics because we need capitalism. We can't, we're tired of starving our own people in the millions and millions because of the Great Leap Forward, right? Or the Cultural Revolution, our own people starving by the millions. So we need capitalism with Chinese character. Well, they're going to do AI with Chinese characteristics. And do I need to spell out what they are? No, it's like 24-hour surveillance. And I was there in 2000, what, 15 or something. I went out with a friend of mine for a drink. He was drinking. I don't drink, but he was, drinking a beer, and all we had is cash, and they couldn't make change. They had no change. There was no currency. We went to the co-op, the supermarket, for some food, and they don't accept cash. It's all there. And he explained to me, well, they can look to see what you're buying in your mail. All of a sudden, if your spending goes up, then they know that someone's living with you again. Oh, you don't have any pork in your purchase? Well, maybe you have some Uyghurs visiting from Western China. Maybe we need to pay you a visit. So that was my first realization where China was heading. There's nothing like being there, not in the Jerzy Kosinski, Peter Sellers way of being there, but going there. That's a better way of putting it, right? You're not going to sit up there in your little home on Pacific Palisades and look over the ocean and go down the hill to Panda restaurants and think or going to Koreatown or Japantown, Little Tokyo, we called it Nihon Machi, Japantown. You call it Little Tokyo, right? And you're going to eat Chinese, right? That doesn't cut it. You're going to have to do some study. You have to go over there, and maybe you'll get over your whole Mr. Miyagi kung fu your fixation. I think many of them are not that stupid. It's a really intentional means of controlling the yellow population, as I mentioned many times before. And Victor Thorne, see, I mentioned this because I'm praising someone, Victor Thorne, who probably doesn't like yellow people, black people, or brown. That's one of the reasons why he got in trouble with people like the ADA, the Anti-Defamation League, or the Southern Poverty Law Center, because he was an anti-Semite, he was a racist, blah, 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 woof, woof. And plus, he wrote for the American Free Press, which was founded by I don't think he was a racial separatist, but he was a white supremacist, I'd have to say, Willis Carto. And there's a whole tradition of that in American political history, right? I'm not ruling that out. I'm fully cognizant of that, right? Because some people have accused me as a yellow person. They say, well, you're one of those guys that wears a hood and a cloak, a KKK, and you are one of the people that they hate. Right, it's like Harold and Kumar escape on Guantanamo, or maybe it was the first one where they accidentally wandered into a KKK meeting. They were wearing the hood and the robe, and they're exposed. But I'm familiar with this literature. That's the point I'm trying to make here, right? But I accept that. I accept his. I mean, I don't tolerate it. I don't internalize it, but I accept the fact that he might be weak in this particular area. He's strong in the other areas of really breaking down the New World Order. I'm talking about Victor Thorne here. And he doesn't have to accept me into the club or as a neighbor, whatever else. I think he died in College Park. Is that the home of Penn State University? Which you wrote about. You spoke about that. And I'm sure he offended the power brokers in Philadelphia, because that's their boy, that's their recreation, man. You're like, that's their Joe Paterno. He's a sacred cow. He's got a big mural dedicated to him on the campus. We're talking about University of Pennsylvania. I mean, Penn State, not University, Penn State football. Come on. With all them vital, husky football players that you can go shower with as part of the Second Mile Club. That's sacred. So those are another group that he offended, Victor Thorne. Let's hear from Victor Thorne himself. Let's hear his voice.
On the line is Victor Thorne, who's just written another book called Conspiratoriality. Victor, thanks for joining us today.
Well, it's great to be here, Dave.
Victor, what number is this now? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I have 40-some books published, so I don't know. I don't know the specific number.
That's amazing to me. You know, I've thought over the course of my life about writing books on various topics, and it's exactly what I've done, thought about them. And by the time I'm done thinking about it, you're done putting out another book. So that's really impressive. You're very prolific. And this, of course, is along the line of many of your other books in the conspiracy genre. I guess you're probably the most prolific conspiracy writer in the world, I would guess.
Other than Tex Mars, I would call him the most prolific with his newsletters and books and radio shows and DVDs. Yeah, I would put him as more prolific than me.
But just books, though, do you think you are?
I don't know. I'd say I'm up there for sure.
Let me start with this. Why Conspiratoriality? What inspired you to write this book?
Well, there were a lot of subjects that I still hadn't covered, and what I really wanted to do is write about, in all of these various books, every single major conspiracy that there's been. And starting with New World Order Exposed, which came out in, I think, 2002, up until now, there were still a few subjects that I'd been wanting to write about for years, but never got around to. So this one here is more like a smorgasbord, I guess. It's divided up into various categories, but it's a lot of the things that I've been following for years that I haven't had a chance yet to write about, and great topics in there. So it was my way of saying, well, these are all the ones that I haven't done yet, and I want to pull them all together.
That book can be found on Amazon.com. I don't own any stock with the company. I'm not a fan of Jeff Bezos, but you need to read Victor Thorne's work. That's a good starting point. That book there, Conspiratorial, because it's sort of an overview. The one on the Clintons, it's Clinton. Yes, conspirituality talks about a whole range of topics and themes. And as you can tell, this material has entered into the DNA of all the pop-up punditry. This is where they're plagiarizing most of the material, because when he was writing it, it was fresh, right? So if you read the materials, oh, I know this stuff already. Well, you know why? Because he's been plagiarized, and that's the source of the material. That I won't name any names this time because some of you don't like me identifying your favorite boy or girl. I got fanboys and fangirls who want to be protective of their icon. So, but you know who I am, who they are, and you know who I am. I don't have any research assistants. I am my own research assistant. I don't have any writers. I don't need any writers. I'm my own self-contained research and development unit. Okay, and we alluded to this already, another area is the Clinton body count, right? That's what it's referred to in the literature. But don't let your eyes glaze over, because I'm about to show you a clip that was, it's actually a large scale, longer documentary, but I can only show you a clip that was produced in Belarus, of all places. So this type of information is not just in the English-speaking world, not just in the United States of America, not just Canada and the Five Eyes in Britain. This is international. They're watching this in China. The Chacoms. They're watching this in Africa, South of Sahara. They're watching this in the Near East, in Eastern Europe, all over the world because of the internet. So here's a piece that was done by, I guess it was state television, Belarus, where they're talking about the Clinton body count. If you're at the refrigerator or washing the dishes, you'll have to come to the monitor to read the subtitles, and unless you understand Ukrainian or Russian. Here we go.
В эфире «Понятная политика». Здравствуйте. Сегодня поговорим о теме, которая в американских СМИ фактически под запретом. Так называемый список Клинтонов. Журналисты разного калибра вот уже 4-е десятилетие расследуют кровавые ниточки, которые ведут к знаменитому семейству. Только подумайте, почти 50 человек, начиная с конца 80-х, из окружения четы, были либо случайно застрелены, либо покончили жизнь самоубийством, либо просто пропали. Вокруг этой темы немало домыслов, конспирологии и фантастических версий, но есть и вполне реальные факты. Громкие убийства, скандалы и влияние семьи, которую нередко называют...
Wow, the production is up to international standards. I never would have known. See, this is another feature of conspiratorialism, that the establishment is driving them crazy. Other parts of the world, Belarus, are up to U.S. standards and British standards, German, the Western world, so-called, in gathering this type of information and educating their public with this information. So congratulations, we're bringing this knowledge to the world. Hillary and Bill, this is what Victor Thorne is doing for us, okay? I just threw that in there just to show you how almost universal or international conspiratorialism has become. And this is something that these characters are not going to be able to deal with long term. These are very quickly some books I'm reading right now about anti-conspiracies, like Professor Catherine Holgram over at UC Davis. The Republic of Lies. Those are all you conspiracy nuts. You people who are watching, you're a bunch of nuts. And then there's Transparency and Conspiracy, published by Duke University by a couple of well-credentialed academics about anti-conspiracy, right? Of course, Duke University Press is the university press most responsible for putting out transgenderism and transsexualism and performativity and all that other rot that's now being excised out of the university in favor of real history, cultural forensics. That's Duke University. So is that a conspiracy? No wonder they're against it, because their whole transgender agenda is going out the window. Yes. And guess who threw it out the window? You. So this sometimes there is a payoff, not in terms of money, but in terms of winning back the republic. Right. And here's a book that I just got. I look forward to reading it. Maybe I'll review it in the future cast. Give me some time. It's called The Ghosts of Iron Mountain. It's about the supposed fake document report from Iron Mountain. You're all familiar with that, right? You can get it online for free. Read Report from Iron Mountain if you have not. You'll get the gist of it. But this character, I think he's Oxford trained. Of course, he worked for the BBC. That tells you a lot right there. Right? Talk about how that fake report, which was done by Victor Navasky, or at least he was behind it, a name that I know because I used to read The Nation, which he edited for many, many years. I used to read The Nation religiously. It's on the Left Liberal Journal of Opinion. It's a weekly. I had a subscription to it, so I know. But he's a Trotskyist. His families are Bolsheviks from way back when. These are the same people who are the neocons today. He says, yes, bomb the world. Let's bring the new Messiah back in, like Zavatar Zev, like Yakub Frank. Let's destroy the world and bring us back to the end times. Right, which is a really good message for your, I mean this ironically, for your far-right Christian conservatives, right? They want the apocalypse. So here's the Ghost of Iron Mountain document, which everybody's read, is now the focus of a book talking about how it set forth all these conspiracies. Okay. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. So before I end, though, I really got to talk about a little bit about Patrick Byrne. But first, right, I alluded to Sandusky, the Penn State scandal, the Second Mile Club, right? This is one of his interviews himself, Victor Thorne.
Interacting and seeing this one and that one, and just by being in the peep show at the same time as this guy, you get to see people all the time, and then before you know it, they're conversating, and then one thing leads to another, and it goes from two separate individual pedophiles to now a group of pedophiles that know each other, and then of course they exchange telephone or communication, whether it was a fax or a phone number or a mailing address, and now they're starting to build up a small network, and then before you know it, you go from a handful of them to a whole bunch of them.
I wonder how these upper level people that would be at the Second Mile or other functions in the tri-state area or all across the country, the more wealthy individuals. Do you have any idea how these people, because people that are hanging out at peep shows and in the porn district aren't going to be the wealthy to-do individuals making large donations to the Second Mile or any other organization. So how do the wealthy people get into it that Savitz would know?
Savage was pretty bold and flamboyant. He believed that he was above the law in Philadelphia and New York. You're right. How did these other business guys, how did they do it without putting themselves as a liability? What happens is, I guess, through a process of social gatherings and general conversations, it's kind of like, I tell you this, you ever been at a football game, high school football game, and you with a couple guys and you're sitting there and they see some girl, she's borderline legal. And the guy says, oh man, I'd like to have her as a babysitter, and I'd be hitting the babysitter, and they all go, ha, 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 ha. Even though you don't engage with it, you're listening to it. To social gatherings, sporting events, this, that, and maybe someone makes a comment. And it's kind of like one of those hypothetical comments, like a metaphor.
So it's a feeling out process.
It's a filling out process. I don't know if you've ever been maybe at a shopping center or something, and where there's
Just as sort of a background, that guy who was speaking is a former or active policeman who himself was groomed as part of the circle. So he's laying out to Victor Thorne how these powerful men in the Philadelphia area using Penn State football or athletics as a means to satisfy their own desire for young male flesh. Right. And they go on and on. So you can see that that's not going to be very welcome in his. I think he lived in College Park too. So he's a kind of a walking target. I'm not saying that they went after him, but I'm saying that if something like that happened, it would be understandable. Anyway, that gives you a little bit of, I think, context for the type of writing he was doing and the sensitive areas that he was touching upon that goes right to the top of these ruling elites, locally, regionally, nationally, and maybe even internationally. This is what he was talking. Victor Thorne was writing about. That was his job, and he was very good at it. He's a good writer. He's a good stylist, and his journalistic. I don't know if he had a degree in journalism, but unlike most of these characters who are out running around, he seems to have had training, formal training in his craft, in his profession. That means something. For most people, it doesn't, but for critical readers like yourselves, it shows up, and we look for it. We're going to see where the same old stories are being recycled from the same tired sources, which are probably fabricated to begin with, or might have been, right? Got to keep checking, digging. All right. I promised you part 2. I'm running a little bit behind, so I might have to pick up later with Patrick Byrne, but I do have a few minutes. He was on, and I shifted gear. I decided to shift gears with Patrick Byrne to bring it up to date, to show the continuity of these issues, these themes, these topics that the martyred Victor Thorne was writing about, in its continuity, its connection with the present, 2025. And I don't think, well, I'm not sure, maybe he has, but it's doubtful that Patrick Byrne was reading Victor Thorne, right? They don't read Victor Thorne. He went to Dartmouth, then he went to Stanford, then I think he went to Oxford. I mean, he had an elite education. And they tend to look down on this type of reportage. I don't know if Patrick Byrne fits that description. I think he's more open-minded than that. He's kind of like sort of a John McAfee type, the man that was on the run from his adopted home, and he escaped with his wife, and he died not too long ago. He's the guy that did the antivirus software, right? That's John Mac. Incredible story, but it's kind of a swashbuckler. Is Patrick Byrne. Also Irish American. Right? It's just they are the swashbuckling people of America, or the world, probably. That's why they continued despite going through their own genocide back in the home country and their old global diaspora, right? Because they're always in a survival mode. They're all trying to figure out, man, how do I escape being exterminated as a people, as a race? The Irish people. So that's Byrne himself. So he was on Alex Jones recently, You might have seen it. Let's just take a quick look at it.
All right, Patrick Byrne is a very successful businessman, CEO, and somebody that's done spy work for the U.S. government and fighting foreign espionage. Enemy Within docuseries.com at Patrick Byrne on X. He's an American patriot, founder of Overstock.com, $2 billion enterprise. He holds a bachelor's degree in Chinese studies, and it just goes on from there. Most people know who Patrick is. He's been instrumental in exposing the deep state and their criminal operations and the Hillary Clinton crime network that he was sent in to expose as more. And he never talked about this for years until it came out in the news that he'd done that work in service to the country. And I really appreciate him coming on. He also, trailblazed exposing the 2020 election fraud. We've been vindicated on that. Now Trump signed executive orders on that to really dismantle that. Amazing developments, pulling us effectively out of the WTO. It's doing all these one-sided deals. He wants to focus today on Venezuela, which is a key component in all of this. And we had Maduro, the dictator down there, come out a month ago and say, look, we were told by Biden they would take the sanctions off. We played the clip. Why don't we find that Maduro clip again? I think the headline is Maduro. The headline was Maduro surrenders to Trump. Well, fighting all of it.
You said there is no PowerPoint. They have to assume that there was a PowerPoint. That were you planning?
Well, that's just one part of it. I was defaulted in Texas, and this is a case went on for 4 years before. They coordinated the first trial in Texas, and the next month, this is 2.5 years ago, in Connecticut. HBO produced it. They had scripts. I was told all these things I couldn't.
I've spent the last 2 years overseas researching this stuff. I know what's coming down the pike, and I think some people are going to have a really sad future. He's not bluffing. Trump is not bluffing.
Well, give us a little. I mean, I've got a good idea, but you've been one of the main guys for the president ferreting all this out. Who are these 6 or 7 we're talking about, and what are we dealing with?
Well, let me be clear. I'm an independent actor. I'm not doing things for the
I know, but you do it. You've been running around a lot.
You got it right. So basically, we're living through a World War III. The World War III has 3 dimensions to it. It's the Cuban, Venezuelan have penetrated us through espionage. You're going to find out there's about 20 traitors in the government to Cuba, Venezuela, China. Secondly, the whole election system really is based in Venezuela. It came out of the Venezuelan mafia. It's all corrupt. And third, this Trinidad invasion is the government of Venezuela is behind it. And this is absolutely a invasion, and it's covered by the Alien Enemies Act. Absolutely. Right down the middle of the fairway. So those 3 things. What do you want to talk? And there was just a big development yesterday in Congress with Tulsi Gabbard. She said something very key and subtle. If you want to,
yeah, let's play that clip first. But I want you to just quantify for people that don't know the subtleties. The Democrats have, and their law firms and these NGOs have been using outside governments and communist networks, just like the guy that just got caught burning down the Tesla factory or dealership in Vegas. That's why they've been protecting MS-13. That's why they've been protecting these other groups. And it goes back to Clinton and the CIA setting up MS-13. This is like not our opinion. And you have the president.
Wow. I've been on the Alex Jones show more than a few times. This is back in the old days. And he has you on as a guest, but usually it's him doing all the talking. This is an important resource here, and he's just talking over him like usual. I mean, I watched it, in its entirety, and just showing it to you, I realized he's just he's stepping on his own dick here as far as the show's concerned. But what you should do as an antidote to Alex Jones is maybe that's his function, is just interrupt people and just talk over them. Read Patrick Byrne's book itself, Danger Close. Now, I went yesterday to get a bowl of pho, P-H-O. That's a Vietnamese soup, right? It's bone broth. It has all kinds of goodies in there. If there's one in your neighborhood, make sure it doesn't have any MSG, but check it out. It's a very good meal for you. So it was kind of a semi-nice day. So I went on the patio afterwards, and I brought this with me. I was reading, and I was only going to read for about 10 minutes or so while I was, relaxing after my meal. And I just kept going, and I must have had a weird expression on my face, or I was really absorbed by it. But or maybe it's so unusual to see people reading in public these days. I think that might be it. But anyway, this woman's walking by the patio and she goes, "What you reading, honey?" And I said, "Oh," I said, "I'm reading about the Clinton crime family." I said, and so she pulled out, she had, of course, the earbuds so she couldn't hear me. And she said, "What?" I said, "The Clintons, remember them?" And she says, "Oh, yeah, I was there." So that's the discussion I had about them very quickly because she kept on walking. But what this book involves is Byrne's participation as a U.S. intelligence asset to try to set up Hillary Clinton for a $18 million bribe so that the controllers, the people who are really in control of the American government, which is the intelligence agencies and the banks, right? So that they could have something over her when they get her elected into the presidency. So as I alluded to at the top of this broadcast right here, the plan was to have a 24-year span of time where these characters from the Obamas, both Barack, Michelle, and both Clintons, would share the presidency back and forth for a generation of Americans. But there was a spoiler that came along. His name is, well, you know who he is. He spoiled it not once, but twice. Anyway, what Byrne talks about is that his government, our government, and he was kind of a candy ass, brilliant, but somewhat naive. He's been all over the world. He's lived in China for extended lengths of time, I think for a year solid. He says he speaks Chinese. I hope it's more than ni hao, but we'll take him at his word. He's been around. Unlike the people in Pacific Palisades that go to Mr. Chow's and think they know about Chinese, he's been there. So he's really well qualified to talk about this new AI system that I'm calling Techno-maoism, right? And they're very much part of this compromise scheme that didn't quite happen. And that's what is allowing Byrne today to come forward to tell the full story. And the full story is wild, ladies and gentlemen. Remember the Russia story and how that was concocted? And they're in investigations of Donald Trump and certain people within his retinue, how they were investigated, in some cases jailed. Remember that? Well, it turns out Byrne was part of that, and he helped set it up because he had this affair that was kind of directed by the intelligence people with this woman named Maria Butina. Remember that? The Russian woman, she was a grad student with red hair, and she was the head of the Russian equivalent of the NRA, 23 years old, 22 years old. And she was a protege of Kalashnikov himself. He's still alive. I think he's in 90s. He's the guy that developed the AK-47 off the Kalashnikov. Right? This whole man pointed her as sort of the representative of gun freedom in Russia and in the world. So that was the pretext that she used in order to get into Republican circles, because she was an intelligence asset. So she was hitting it with Patrick Byrne and vice versa as part of this honey trap situation. I'll let you read the details itself. And it's also in this biopic that has recently been released. I haven't seen it yet. I probably will. I'm not that excited about it because I don't like biopics in general. They're usually pretty forced. But anyway, it's there. And the story is so incredible, but it gives me a really deep insight into the inner workings of our real government. I don't call it the deep state. I call it the government. That's just the way governments are. Not good. I'm not saying it's good. But there's no such thing as a shallow state and a deep state and a crypto state. It's the state is by definition secret and oppressive, right? And it's just a matter of degree to which this is true, right? The oppression. So this is called, let me show you, you have to watch it very carefully. This is called Operation Snow Globe. Let's see here. You know the snow globe? That little plastic device, you shake it up and the snow or fake snow goes in through a seam. Well, this is what the intelligence people had. They were going to try to bring Hillary Clinton into the globe so that she could be controlled, right? And most of you by now know that the people on the U.S. Supreme Court and most of the people in Congress are controlled through blackmail or other compromise processes, right? This is what's trying to be cleaned up right now. Whether we're successful or not, it's still up, up in the air. By the way, Byrne names, right? The people who were behind this Operation Snow Globe. This is really unusual. And the way he gets away with it, or is trying to get away with it, is he had something called a golden letter that was drafted by a small group, half a dozen U.S. congressmen, people like Arlen Specter, for example, who wrote him a letter and has it on file. It's kind of like an immunity card that he can violate certain rules and regulations, maybe even laws, or the group play the gray areas without being arrested and indicted for any number of crimes that any ordinary person would be tossed into jail for, right? And they try to do that to Trump. So he has this golden letter. It's on file, according to him. Whether it's a BS story or not, we'll see. But he's written about it in this book, which I recommend to you. So watch very carefully. In about 30 seconds, Byrne talks about Operation Snow Globe.
Turned out to be called Operation Snow Globe. And it was Obama, Brennan, and Comey's plan to get Hillary to step into a child's snow globe that you see at Christmas, that they could rattle anytime they wanted. And my bribe just turned out to be the bait to lure Hillary to step into the snow globe. And that all happened. And I've given this all under oath to the J6 committee.
So there you have it. Yes, let me give you the information. Yeah, page 79, page 80. Byrne met with Senator Arlen Specter and his Judiciary Committee. The Judiciary Committee, according to Byrne, is responsible for regulating lawmakers, right? They're the ones that are supposed to be investigating, let's call it irregularities in legislation, compromise situations. And they were very much interested in what Byrne describes as the regulatory capture of the SEC. That's because he's a stock man. He's a Wall Street man. That's Byrne's job, the Securities and Exchange Commission, right? Regulatory capture. So they set him up there and they wrote us the so-called golden letter, which is on file. I hope he has a copy of it because documents like this can disappear overnight, right? So anyway, I think I'll go into this book at another time a little bit more in depth. The reason I bring in Patrick Byrne is that independently of Victor Thorne, he's showing us how all this systemic corruption and all these significant institutions, and he does talk about the university to an extent. I wish he would talk more about it because he's been through the elite institute. He knows how they operate, but he is validating much of the other stories that are floating out, which are being dismissed by these academic anti-conspiracy theory people, right? So this is how, historiographically speaking, this is how history is written, how it's formalized, how it comes to become a body of reliable knowledge through this type of research, this type of book, this type of testimony, combined with other sources. And for you and me, who are average citizens who want to exercise our political franchise in the most effective and intelligent and humanistic way possible, we need to know as much of this information as possible so that we can identify when the system starts going sideways, and that we can correct it. And hopefully by now you know that it can be corrected. Maybe not fully and not quickly as you'd like or comprehensively, right? With a wave of the hand. And maybe you hate Alex Jones. I was reading the comment, oh, I don't want Alex Jones. So what? It doesn't matter what you watch or don't watch. Right? Stop with the knee-jerk type of reactions. Take it all in. You don't have to accept it all. Stop choosing up side. Oh, I'm a so-and-so fan. I'm a fanboy of so-and-so. Or did you see so-and-so on the Joe Rogan show? He's the latest blah, 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 woof, woof. No. And I've already given you one concrete suggestion. I'm going to put it in my comment below so you can link into it and buy it. And if Patrick Byrne is watching this show by just sheer dumb luck, right? I invite Mr. Byrne, or Dr. Byrne, actually he's PhD. I invite Dr. Byrne onto my show. Now I want to ask him about his perceptions about the university and about academia. He didn't go down that course, but he's been in that world, and he speaks to these characters within that world quite frequently, right? Professional as well as personal reasons, as well as people like Warren Buffett, who he names as his mentor. So he is a player. He's on the playing field right there, dealing with these individuals at the highest levels of governance, right, including U.S. senators, as well as industrialists, business people, bankers, intellectuals, academics. And the good news is that he's on our side. So you can grouse all you want and shrug your show. Nothing's going to happen. No, we want the full blah, blah, blah. Well, you can cry on your bra all you want. But the rest of us will just keep plunging ahead. Right. All right. I've gone past my time. I realize that there's a lot of material terrain to cover, but this is just sort of a opening salvo, let's call it, for a larger effort that's coming up that will be dealing with these books like The Report from Iron Mountain. I'm really enjoying the fact that there are all these characters now who are really responding to the upswing in world awareness from Belarus through the entirety of America and the English-speaking world, right? The establishment, the banking establishment, the bloodlines are now beginning to feel it because they're publishing in these areas and they're aggressively trying to neutralize these voices. So keep your voice loud and strong. Keep studying it. Don't give up hope. And do it casually, but don't descend into these partisan sort of fanboy politics. That's what TubeU people want. The managers of TubeU, they want you to say, well, I'm for this band. I don't like that style of music, or this is stupid. I don't like Kardashian. I like Chloe, but I don't like the other one. All right, that's pretty fatuous level of existence. I don't know. And I follow a lot of it myself. I know more than someone like me should. All right, so I'm not trying to pass a judgment. I'm just saying that there's this other whole world that is being revealed to us by what I believe to be reliable sources. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's my time. God willing, I'll be back with you next Sunday. And if you know Patrick Byrne, have him hit me up here, have him get in touch with me, and I'll have him on the show. And maybe he'll field some questions here from you in the live chat. All right. Thank you. Bye.